Arata is a risless wimp whose crush was stolen from him for being a shy loser. However, his no-game life takes a turn when he discovered that he's adopted, and his 5 sisters are not related, so now he can clap them with no fear of Alabama allegations.
Nice.
In an upper-class area of Tokyo, in a mansion resides a brilliant, self-made entrepreneur, and because that man loves to clap, he has 7 children living there, all loving each other the Alabama way called the Shionji family. The oldest brother, Arata, asks his younger brother, Shion, for some tips on how to bag a baddie for him to clap. But Shion tells Arata that he can't help him. Shion asks him about the girl he likes, and Arata reminds him that he only finds her cute, not clappable. It confused Shion how Arata, the heir to the Shionji family, is unable to bag any baddie, but Arata tells him that he's having difficulty finding love because of his disbelief in destiny. Just then, their 5 sisters, Uka, Kotono, Banri, Minami, and Seiha, pop up, suspecting these 2 brothers to be talking about girls. But Shion counters, saying how Arata was actually curious about Uka's 3 sizes. It pisses her off, so Uka orders their dog to attack Arata, and when it does start biting him, the sisters tell him that it's karma for creeping on his sisters. Arata tells them how he will never be interested in his own sisters, but Seiha reminds him about the incident with Kotono. He assures them that it was a misunderstanding, and Banri supports his statement, saying how it's normal for boys like him to be curious about his own sister's plots, but Seiha warns them that sibling relationships might create taboo babies. Meanwhile, Minami believes that Arata is actually a cool dude, but when he tries to thank her, she punches him hard, saying how her reflexes are alert after playing Street Fighter, which confuses the others with how her reflexes work. Just then, Uka reminds the boys about Kotono's upcoming birthday, and while Shion can attend it, Arata tells them that he has other plans, but when Kotono asks him if he can come, Arata assures her that he will be there. On their way to school, people take notice of the sisters, saying how much of a jackpot it is for all 5 sisters to be beautiful, and that the brothers are lucky to be living in the same house with them. However, at school, Arata vents to Shion how the reality is different, as they, the brothers, are always on the receiving end of punishments compared to the sisters, and that their father always took the sisters' side. Shion understands people's idea, seeing how they get to live with Banri, who is the gentle hottie, Saiha, who is the cute genius, Minami, who is a future Olympic athlete, Uka, who is a future council president, and Kotono, who is a pure and beautiful being who needs to be protected. However, unlike how others see those girls as angels, Arata can only see them as his devilish sisters. But when Shion reminds him of his incident with Kotono, where she told Arata she liked him, Arata was forced to decline her Alabama feelings. Just then, through the window, Arata sees the girl he likes, Lala, and when Shion sees her, he understands how Arata's childhood scars from the sisters made him passive with girls. Back home, Arata is contemplating whether he should send a friend request to Lala, and it annoys him how Shion was right about him being passive with girls. Just then, Uka walks in and asks him to share his school notes with her. She thanks him as her twin for the notes, but he reminds her that they are fraternal twins. While she's writing down the notes, Arata can't help but notice her plots. And when he tells her that she's dressed to open, she tells him to control his gaze from being too Alabama. Just then, she asks him about the girl he likes, and while flustered, he reveals that it's Lala, which she recognizes. She tells him that she's in the same committee as Lala and offers to hook him up with her, but he stops her from doing so. He tells her that he has his ways of rizzing girls, saying how it's none of her business, and after hearing that, Uka gets upset and leaves the room. Meanwhile, Kotono is in her room, looking at her family picture, but she can't help but keep staring at Arata. Days heading to Kotono's birthday, Arata thinks hard about the nature of destiny, questioning what he would be if he weren't a brother to the 5 sisters. But on his thoughtful walk, he sees Lala with a man he assumes is her baby daddy, which gives Arata a heartbreak. On the weekend, fully dripped out, Arata exits his room for Kotono's birthday party, and on his way there, he runs into Uka, who compliments him on his outfit choice. Then the siblings gather around the dining table awaiting their father, but just then, an argument starts. Uka finds out how Minami lost the AirPods Uka lent her, and they start calling each other names, wishing they were never siblings. While the others can only watch, Arata has had enough and orders them to stop. He reminds them how they will always be siblings, and the others smile at him, showing approval towards his short speech. Then their father, Kaname, shows up and they start the party, but before they make a toast for Kotono's birthday, Kaname tells them that he has an announcement. To everyone's shock, Kaname informs them that they are not actually siblings, and while he will always love all of them like his own, the truth is, they are all adopted. He states that while Minami and Shion are really twins, the rest are not, and he's telling them this truth because of a promise he made to their mother years ago. He asks that they continue the party, but while dinner is being served, every single one of them is still in shock over the life-changing news they just received. Later, the siblings gather in a room, and when their maid is about to serve them tea, Banri sends her away, asking for privacy. While the others are tense, Minami is still joyful, even though her life has just changed, and they credit it to her having their father's bright personality. Uka expresses how she feels cheated, believing that their father could have said it earlier, But Seiha disagrees and thinks that Kotono's birthday was the perfect moment, as it was their father's promise to their mother. Being the oldest, they ask Banri if she remembers anything about her past when they were first adopted, and while she does recall something, she refuses to share it with them, saying how it's unimportant. She assures them all that what's important is that they love each other and that they will always be siblings. They applaud her for the speech, which lifts their mood, and they all head to bed. But while everyone is walking back to their rooms, Arata is still there, contemplating what just happened. Back in his room, Arata continues thinking about what just happened, and to get his mind off it, he goes to take a bath. He sees someone's plot armor but ignores it and goes in. However, he makes eye contact with Kotono, who's taking a bath, and after seeing each other's assets, Arata runs away, apologizing to Kotono. Instead of being upset, Kotono asks Arata as his brother to wash her back, and just like old times, he does what she asks, which she enjoys. While he tells her to scrub her own back, she admits that she likes it when he is the one who washes her back. Meanwhile, Uka is chilling in the kitchen when Shion joins her. After what just happened, Uka asks Shion if Arata said anything, saying how it's affecting Uka heavily to find out that Arata is not her fraternal twin, and Shion assures her that Arata feels the same way. As the heir to the Shiunji family, Arata has a responsibility as the big brother to all of them, but unbeknownst to them both, in the bathroom, he is getting a soft hug in the back from Kotono. Meanwhile, Shion tells Uka how, since they aren't siblings, they are all legally allowed to marry each other, and while it disgusts Uka thinking about marrying someone like Arata, she knows that Shion is telling the truth. She orders Shion to get Arata to stop staring at her plots, but Shion tries to excuse his former brother, saying how Arata is just like any hormonal young man. She then asks Shion what exactly happened between Arata and Kotono in the past, and while Shion knows what it is, he already promised to Arata to keep it a secret. But Uka tells Shion, while the others like to tease Arata about that incident, they all know how Arata is not a creep who would jump his own sister. After hearing that, Shion tells Uka the truth, and to her absolute shock, she finds out how Kotono confessed her feelings for Arata, even when they were still siblings, but Shion informs her that Arata rejected Kotono's feelings, not wanting to have an Alabama-loving relationship. However, it was Kotono who tried to force Arata to love her, which ended with him on top of her, which was what the girls saw, and after they just knew how they were not actually siblings, they realized how things could get spicier than before. Back in the bathroom, Arta tries to get Kotono to get her Alabama-loving hands off him, but Kotono reminds him how, since they're not blood-related, they can be together, and even one day marry each other. She asks him if she's a bad girl, but Arata turns on his big bro mode and tells her that, while they're not blood-related, he will always be his brother who will look after her until the day she marries someone. Kotono walks back to the bathtub, saying how Arata is both the kindest and meanest person he knows, and Arata exits the room, saying happy birthday, and leaving Kotono wishing that Arata responded to her feelings. Unbeknownst to Arata, when he steps out of the bathroom, someone is watching him. Then he heads to his room, thinking if Kotono did what she did because of what happened, and when he steps inside, he is greeted by Seiha, who's studying while waiting for him. Without beating around the bush, she asks him where he's been, and not wanting to tell the truth, he lies, saying that he's been walking around the house. She talks about how his room, which is the smallest among the siblings, feels like the biggest, which reminds them of when they first played rock, paper, scissors to determine who gets the biggest room, and Arata remembers how he lost. While hearing Seiha's yappings, Arata wonders what this girl wants, and in that moment, to Arata's surprise, Seiha pushes him down to the bed. She gets on top of him, saying how they have to keep it a secret, and sticks her plots to his body, which makes him get closer to her danger zone. Arata starts suspecting that Seiha is the same way as Kotono, but to his relief, Seiha says that she has no concern over him. She reveals that she saw him in the bath with Kotono, saying how she saw all of their interaction, but before he demands an explanation, he gets her off his body before his volcano explodes. Seiha tells him how she always knows about Kotono's feelings for him, but suspects that, after knowing that they are not actual siblings, Kotono loses all of her restraints. She praises him for handling the situation properly, but to ensure that he won't fold to his own sister's advances, she had to make sure that he doesn't want to develop the plots with them. He asks her if she doesn't have any other ways aside from getting on top of him, and Seiha tells him that since she has no feelings for him, she doesn't see the issue in her method. She reminds him how a relationship between siblings resulted in questionable offspring, but after what happened that day, that rule doesn't apply to them anymore, and their relationship as siblings won't stop Kotono in the future from wanting Arata to expand her domains. She suggests that it might even happen between them, and while Seiha hates the idea of them bumping bellies, she knows that it's not impossible. She leaves the room saying how glad she is that Arata didn't fold, but when she gets outside, she starts questioning herself whether she folded when she was on top of him. The next morning, Arata wakes up feeling horrible after the roller coaster of emotions he endured the night before. When he steps out, his eyes are refreshed at the size of Banri and Kotono wearing a nurse outfit, and Banri informs him that it's her uniform, which she wanted to try on, but decided to try on Kotono as well. When she asks Arata if he likes how hot they look, he says no, causing Banri to cry, demanding him to say that he likes them, but he refuses and gets flustered. Then they head to school, and joined by Shion, they watch as other dudes ogle over their sisters, which makes Shion wonder how they would react if they knew that they're not actually siblings. Seeing how calm his sisters are makes Shion believe that girls are better liars than men, and while Arata agrees, he knows that deep down, their sisters are as affected as they are after what happened. They continue their day as school normally as if nothing ever changed between them, but after school, he realizes that things have changed and he tries to convince himself that everything hasn't. Just then, Minami pops up, and it surprises Arata to see her not in practice like usual. They walk home, and Arata praises her for her dedication to athletics, where she won multiple trophies and even got herself dubbed a future Olympian. Suddenly, she gets surrounded by her fans, asking to lick her toes and to let them drink her bathwater, and after they leave, Minami reveals that she got simping fans after she did a photo shoot wearing a men's outfit. He asks her if she wants to have fun in her day off from practice, but to his shock, Minami informs Arata that the reason she got a break from practice was because her coach told her to study, as her grades are all failing as it turns out. While Minami is the most athletic among the siblings, she's also the biggest moron. As the big bro, Arata declares that he will tutor her. He brings her to a karaoke to study in private, and while he's teaching her, he can't help but acknowledge how pretty she looks up close. When Arata is busy explaining something, he doesn't see that Minami is distracted and has picked a song for her to sing, and when she tries to solve the questions by herself, it ends with her answering everything wrong. However, she doesn't get bothered by how dumb she is and starts singing horribly, changing the lyrics of the song into about her life as a tennis athlete. And while Arata wants her to study, he can't help but enjoy the fun with his own sister. After they finish the session, they step out of the room, but Arata quickly hides from someone. And when Minami sees who it is, she sees the girl Arata has feelings for, Lala, with her man. Then, on their way home, they talk about what happened from the night before, and when Arata asks her what she thinks about it, she tells him that since they're not their father's children, they have to find out their real parents. She expresses how she feels bad for Kotono as their youngest, and Arata realizes that not only is Minami smart in some ways, but she's also a good sister. She teases Arata, saying how since he's not actually her big brother, she gets to treat him like her senpai, but Arata tells her not to say that out loud, not wanting other people to know about their weird and complicated relationship. However, Minami states that what's important is the bond they created for all their life, where he knows who he really is, so he shouldn't feel sad not being able to bag the girl he likes. He asks her how she knows about Lala, and Minami reveals that Uka told her, which makes Arata realize how much of a blabbermouth Uka is. Minami assures Arata that, as his former sister, she knows how good a person he is, so he should cheer up even though Lala didn't get to see what kind of person he is, unlike his sisters. And Arata gets touched by what she says. Back home, Minami hands a cake to Uka, which pleases her and returns her earpods, apologizing for losing them before. However, while Uka accepts her bribe, she hands Minami the earpods, telling her to keep them, and she accepts, which ends their previous fight in peace. The next morning, after waking up, Arata brushes his teeth as usual, thinking about what Kotono did the other day. When he steps out of the bathroom, he runs into her in the hallway, and they greet each other awkwardly, but Arata knows that it's because of what happened between them. Just then, Seiha pops up, roasting him for still remembering the bathroom incident, and he gets surprised by her presence. When he calls her name, she asks to be called Seiha-chan, which was what she told him to call her, and when he does call her that, she gets mildly satisfied. She asks him if he's worried about what might happen between him and Kotono, but while he's not worried as he holds no feelings for her, Seiha is worried as she felt something for him the other day. Suddenly, Minami pops up acting like she's from Street Fighter, and she talks to Arata about their gaming session from the other day, boasting about how she defeated him countless times. When she calls Arata senpai, Seiha is surprised and informs Minami that she should call someone a senpai when they are more mature and not an idiot like Arata. As the two girls are leaving, Arata wonders why he has to start his day like that. Then, at school, Arata freezes when he spots Lala and decides not to do anything. Uka pops up, mocking him, saying that he should just tell her how he loves her, and when he informs her that Lala is dating someone, she tells him that he lost all his aura after getting rejected without telling her his feelings. Just then, Uka's friends call for her, and when she hangs out with her friends, she informs them that she will be going to a sea park for Kotono's birthday. While watching her, Arata can't believe how popular Uka really is with everyone, thinking how different she is compared to the little gremlin he knows at home. Uka's friends notice Arata behind Uka, and they tell Uka how hot Arata really is, saying how they would love to date him and be his baby mama. However, Uka tells them that it's a bad idea, as she believes that Arata is a knobhead who can't bag a baddie. But while trying to undermine Arata, she can't help but praise him and ends up blushing to her own words. When they leave for class, Arata hears about the sea park trip and hopes that nothing weird will happen there. The next day, the sibling arrives at the sea park for Kotono's birthday, and when they see the place's mascot, Uka and Minami rush him, wanting to take a picture. Minami tells the others that she's getting hungry, and after hearing that, Banri asks Arata to come with her to help her get food. Moments later, the two of them get food for the others, but when they look at the mascot, they are no longer there, leaving Arata and Banri with the food. Arata tries calling for them to get their location, but when they don't answer his calls, Arata thinks that they are on a ride, and Banri has an idea. She declares that they are on a date, just the two of them, believing that they will eventually run into the others. And when Arata asks her about what they do with the food, Arata ends up having to eat all of it. Like a real couple, Banri hangs onto Arata's manly arms, and he thinks to himself how, despite Banri's older sister's charm, she always makes Arata nervous. He notices how his arms are sticking to her squishies, which makes him blush, and when he tries to remind her that he is her brother, she tells him that nobody there knows that they are siblings, so they should just enjoy the moment. When Arata blushes even harder at her plump, instead of pulling away, Banri teases him, saying how she knows that he's enjoying her plots, and he gets flustered. Banri apologizes for her plots, saying that they are too big to control, especially for a guy without experience like him.
Emotional, damn it!
As they are walking side by side, Banri tells him that he should be happy to have such a baddie beside him. While that annoys him, Arata acknowledges how all the gooning-loving men around them are staring daggers at them because of Banri. Just then, she offers him to touch her melons as a treat, and he blushes redder than a tomato, telling her to stop it. While walking up the stairs, Arata can't help but stare at the lovely view in front of him, and he falls over the stairs, which makes him feel completely embarrassed. She offers him her hand as help, and when he accepts her offer, she calls him cute. Then the two of them enjoy their private date, all the while the others are doing the same. However, Arata keeps trying to call, and after the many attempts, he manages to contact Shion, who informs him where they are. However, they are far from each other, so they decide to just have fun. The girls talk about how they know how Banri will, tease Arata heavily, making him wish they were never siblings. They switch their attention to the birthday girl, Kotono, and encourage her to enjoy her birthday by riding all the rides she wants. Back with Arata, he and Banri rest after all the rides they tried. And while Banri feels hungry, Arata is not after all the food he consumed earlier. When she takes a bite of the churros, Arata notices just how precious her smile is behind her fox-like act. He gets curious about how she feels about their father's announcement, so he asks her straight up. She expresses how, while she was shocked at first, she wanted to know details, and Arata sees just how much she thought about it. She asks him what's on his mind, and when he tells her how he doesn't want their relationship as siblings to change, Banri's eyes glitter, saying how adorable he is. She rubs his head like a big sister, and it reminds her of how she always did that whenever Uka and the others made him cry. Banri tells Arata how, as their oldest sibling, she made a vow to always protect all of them, even if it means taking her life. That reminds Arata of how Banri has always been that way, protecting the others and being the coolest older sister anyone could ask for. Suddenly, a stupid little girl pops up with drinks, and she slips, causing the drink to fly towards Banri. However, Arata acts quickly and gets himself between them, which gets him wet. The stupid little girl apologizes, but Arata warmly tells her that it's okay. Banri gets worried for him, telling him that he shouldn't have done that, but just like her, Arata expresses how he will protect them all alongside her as her little brother. It rizzes up Banri, making her realize just how much of a man Arata turns out to be. Just then, the others pop up and they reunite. But when they see Arata drenched, they ask him questions on whether Banri got too excited and almost drowned him in her seafood juice. They continue to the next ride, and on their walk there, Banri asks to hold Arata's hand. When he asks why, she grabs it and pulls him with her, saying she just wants to hold his hand. That night, while they're playing around at the bridge, acting like princesses, the boys and Kotono go to the toilet. But Seiya sees this as a chance to inform the others about what happened between Kotono and Arata. After informing them, they can't believe that Kotono has the guts to cling on to Arata with her plots out. And they ask Seiya what Arata did. She informs them that, like a good brother, Arata talked Kotono down and stopped her advances. She assures them that Arata has no degenerate desires for his sisters, after Seiya herself tested it out. When they ask her how, she calmly reveals that she mounted him to see whether his heart beat and ding-a-ling was rising, but to her relief, neither of them did. Seiya explains that the reason she told them this is because she believes they need to do something before something happens between them. And they decide not to confront Kotono, so she won't panic. Just then, Aoka informs them that Kotono already tried something similar in the past, and Arata took the blame, which caused him to get called a creep by them. That makes Seiya realize that their father's announcement about them not being blood-related gave Kotono the impulse to want to have Arata's taboo babies. Banri calms them down, saying that they shouldn't jump to any conclusions yet. She reveals that she talked with their father after his announcement, and when they ask her what she talked about, she tells them that she wanted to find out her background, and finds that, as an orphan, they never knew Banri's parents' whereabouts or who they are. She suggests that they should keep it low profile and keep an eye on them, which everyone agrees to. Then, on their way to the merchandise store, some of the girls are fired up, wanting to get themselves action figures. When he sees how Kotono is acting, Arata feels relieved to see her act normal, like usual. He knows how their father's announcement took them all by surprise, but is happy to see that they are still hanging out like normal, and he's convinced that nothing will ever change between them. At that moment, a fireworks show starts and they enjoy it together, as siblings. Later, while the others are buying merchandise, Arata sees a girl who looks like Lala and gets nervous for a second. Uka pops up seeing him nervous and invites him to walk with her. She talks about how weird it feels to know that they are not actual twins. But Arata stops her thought process, saying how she will always be his twin, even when they're not. After hearing that, Uka talks about how in the past they believed that they could use telepathy as twins, and that they knew how each other thought all the time. It makes Arata flustered hearing that, and he asks her why she suddenly brought that up. To his shock, Uka tells Arata that she loves him, making him realize that everything is about to change. Days before at school, Shion asked Arata if he had ever seen any of their sisters romantically, but instead of answering, Arata asked him why he asked that question. Shion explained that since they are no longer siblings, making offspring is no longer taboo, and that Kotono has even shot her shot at Arata. But Arata assured him that he had never seen his sisters romantically. However, in the present, after Uka confessed to him, he saw her as more than a sister, but a romantic partner. However, Uka expresses to Arata that she loves him platonically, which relieves him of his tension, and he is convinced that even if hell freezes over, Uka would never see him as a romance candidate. He calls her a tsundere who plays hard to get, and she leaves him, reminding him to get her souvenirs. However, while he laughs it off, he recalls what Shion told him about seeing his sisters romantically and starts tweaking. Meanwhile, on her lonely walk, Uka can't forget what she just told Arata, and she realizes that she felt jealous of Kotono after Seiha told her how Kotono told Arata that she loved him. The next morning, Arata is spending his time working out at the home gym, building his chiseled, lady-folding abs, when Minami pops in and wants to join him. He expresses his excitement about her joining the workout, but she tells him to tone it down due to it being the early morning. She praises him for never skipping training, and she reminds him how their father used to always train Arata to the bones in order to make him a leader. But Arata still fails to see how it was beneficial for him mentally. Arata also shows Minami respect for never missing training and fighting to become a future Olympian. And while she brushes off his compliment, she blushes heavily. Unbeknownst to Arata, the night before when the girls are at the souvenir shop, they realize that Uka and Arata were missing, so Minami went to look for them. To her shock, she heard Uka telling Arata that she loved him. And ever since then, Minami has been stressing over how she could confront Arata about that incident, not wanting to be their children's aunt anytime soon. While she is thinking hard, Arata tells him to stop lazing around. So Minami quickly does some dumbbell flies to pretend like everything is fine, but Arata tells her that her form is trash. After gathering her bravery, she asks Arata if something happened between him and Uka, but not knowing what she's referring to, Arata assures her that while he fights with Uka a lot, they are always extremely tight with each other, which is something that Minami doesn't want to hear at that moment, knowing what happened between them. She then leaves the room, not able to contain the pressure on her shoulders and not knowing what to do with the situation. Later, after finishing the workout, Arata heads to the bathroom, thinking about what Minami just said to him regarding the relationship between him and Uka. Suddenly, when Arata opens the bathroom door, Seiha is there, wearing the last of her plot armors, and while Arata is flustered, Seiha couldn't care less. She talks about how they are experiencing what a lot of rom-com anime MCs go through, but unlike them, Seiha doesn't punch Arata to the moon. When Arata tries to close the door, he sees that Seiha's clothes are blocking it from closing, so he is forced to pick them up and put them in the laundry basket that is inside the bathroom, while preventing himself from looking at Seiha in the shower. When he does look at her showering, he realizes that Seiha doesn't act any differently compared to before, unlike himself, who carries degenerate thoughts. He notices Seiha's ring, the one that their mother left for them, and asks her if it finally fits her. She tells him that it's a bit loose, but she refuses to let go due to her memory of her mother. Later, while alone in his room, Banri knocks on Arata's door asking to come in. When she does, she starts teasing him for having such a clean and tidy room, reminding him of all the times their father would scold him for making a mess on the bedroom floor. He asks her why she's here and she chit-chats around him, saying how she only wanted to visit his room. However, she casually snoops around his laptop, asking if he has any spicy videos, and to his surprise, Banri reads the title of one of his limited edition Mia Khalifa videos. But he quickly grabs his laptop away from her, asking how she opened his password. To his embarrassment, it turns out the title can be seen on his email notifications and that she didn't need to put in any passwords. While Arata is embarrassed, Banri expresses how she is actually relieved to know that his brother is a cultured man who enjoys Johnny Sins and Mia Khalifa videos. Just then, she invites Arata to go on a date with her. The next day, on their date, she takes him to a phone store, knowing that Arata has wanted to upgrade his phone for a long time, and he feels happy with her gesture. However, she starts teasing him, saying how they should go to a hotel afterward and do hot yoga until the sun goes up and down. Then, when Arata chooses his new phone, he chooses it quickly and efficiently, and when Banri asks him why he chose quickly, Arata expresses how he doesn't care about the design that much. Just then, Banri starts yapping about how people choose their phones like their partners, and that if someone chooses their phones only for their features, that means that someone prefers personality over appearance. However, Banri believes that looks do matter, as if one day Arata were to get an annoying lover, at least he could still look at her pretty face instead of an ugly pig. Then, the saleswoman brings the phone, and when she spots Banri beside Arata, she offers them a couple's deal to get a huge discount. While Arata wants to decline, Banri pretends to be his lover, saying that they will take the deal, but he quickly declines. Afterward, Arata wonders why Banri suddenly took him out on a date, but his thought process is stopped when Banri sees an ice cream stand. After getting the ice cream, she reminds him of the time they all fought over an ice cream incident, and Arata remembers how Minami accidentally ate Kotono's ice cream. But because Kotono was too reserved, Uka stood up for her against Minami, which started a fight between all the siblings. However, because she was too scared of confrontations, Kotono always hid in the closet whenever she was sad, which granted her the name the Closet Fairy from her sisters. It reminds Arata of how Banri used to be scared of the supernatural, but she tells him to shut his mouth, as the idea of Casper the friendly ghost being freaky from behind her still scares her. Just then, Banri asks Arata if anything happened, assuring him that, as his big sister, she will have his back, and he assures her that everything is okay. Meanwhile, Kotono is in her room, looking at the pictures they took on the birthday trip, but when he sees Arata in the picture, she can't help but stare at him a bit longer. Suddenly, she gets a message from Banri in the sisters' group chat, showing how she's on a date with Arata, eating ice cream, and while that makes Kotono extremely jealous, she stops herself from going too far and instead saves the picture. Back on the date, Banri asks Arata to continue the date, which surprises him, but suddenly she reads a message intensely on her phone and tells Arata that she needs to go somewhere as soon as possible. Before she leaves, Arata tells her that she should go on a date with a proper boyfriend next time, and while Banri blushes from cheek to cheek, she teases her brother, telling him not to get carried away. When she leaves, everyone she passes stares at her, refusing to believe someone so beautiful exists. Then, Banri calls Minami, telling her that she couldn't get Arata to open up about what happened between him and Uka, even after the date they just went on. However, Minami still refuses to believe that nothing happened, still convinced that Uka told Arata that she loved him, so she sends a message to Banri, expressing how she must have misheard about Uka telling Arata that she loves him. Suddenly, she notices that she sent the message to the sisters group chat, so she quickly deleted the message, praying to the anime gods that no one saw it. Just then, Uka pops up in the bathroom, asking that she gets her turn to bathe, and while Minami was initially nervous, she feels relieved to know that Uka didn't read the message. However, unbeknownst to Minami, Kotono saw the message before it as deleted, and she couldn't believe that she now has a love rival. Later, they have dinner together, and when Arata looks at Seiha, who's brooding, he can't help but notice that she looks like she has had issues for a while. Then he runs into her while she's alone, and while he initially ignores her, he ends up asking her if she is okay. To his surprise, it turns out that Seiha has been meaning to play Twister, and since Arata asked, she takes him to play with her. He asks her why she wanted to play Twister all of a sudden, and she informs him that after her visit to his room, she has been having degenerate thoughts about him. So she needs to find out if she actually wants to bump bellies with him. Arata wants to refuse to play, but when Seiha reminds him of who helped him during his test, he folds and agrees to play Twister with her. When the game starts, Arata begins the game by purposefully staying away from Seiha to avoid contact, but since that won't answer Seiha's questions, she purposefully tries to get closer, hoping to get a reaction out of herself so she can see whether she wants him. They continue for a few more rounds when Seiha mentions how Arata is still being hesitant, so the next round, she purposefully puts herself in a position that would make most men bark for some roast beef. It gets Arata to almost start drooling, and he declares that he forfeits, but Seiha doesn't allow him to back off, so he forcefully continues the game. In the next round, Arata has to put his foot in the color blue, which is directly under Seiha. He tries his best to be careful, but still ends up bumping her rice cakes anyway, which makes him malfunction because of how soft they are. Just then, Seiha starts yapping about the humans' hormones, and she explains how humans have both dopamine, which is released when they win something, and oxytocin, which is released when a person wants to do hot yoga with someone. She questions at what point she switches from dopamine to oxytocin when she's with Arda, whom she sees as someone who can make her kitty purr. Just then, she gets into a peculiar position that Mia Khalifa usually gets into, which, in that moment, makes Arata wish that he were Johnny Sins. He starts tweaking, but suddenly Seiha loses her strength and drops her rice cakes on Arata's body, saying that her muscles gave up. Arata can't believe that he felt her own sister's rice cakes on him, but to Seiha's relief, she tells Arata that she didn't feel any plotful thoughts towards him during the game, which means that she can continue her life like normal. When Seiha leaves, she thanks Arata for his help, which leaves him frustrated, wondering what kind of BS just happened. Just then, Uka pops up after hearing his frustration, and she asks him to join her later for a game session. It makes Arata wonder why Uka would suddenly ask him to play games with her alone. And he assumes that it's because she just really wants to play games with him. He still remembers how Uka would put him in submission holds whenever she lost to him, but what bothers him more is how she told him that she loved him out of the blue. They start playing the game, where Uka plays with excitement, like it's the best game in the world, while Arata plays calmly. Just then, being too excited, she leans onto his leg and Arata realizes that she doesn't realize that she's sticking to him, but when he sees the bright smile she has on her face, he can't help but see her as his adorable little sister. While Uka manages to defeat Arata for the first few rounds, Arata gets into the zone and defeats her again and again, leaving her devastated by the number of losses she has to him. Just then, she tells him that she needs to go to the bathroom, but when she gets behind him, she puts him in a chokehold like the old days. During it, Arata starts begging her to let go, saying how both he and his character in-game are dying, But what worries him most is the fact that she has her plots sticking on his body, and him trying his best not to wake up the beast. Having had enough of her BS, Arata uses his raw strength to turn the situation around, and pins Uka down on the floor, saying that he was hurt. However, he just realizes the position he is in, and when he looks down, he sees that Uka is gazing at him like prey being caught by a lion. She mentions how he's a man now, and it takes him by surprise to hear that. She quickly leaves the room, realizing that she doesn't stand a chance against Arata, and deep down she wishes that Arata would go to town on her. It leaves Arata confused about what just happened, questioning what she meant by calling him a real man. And out of fatigue, he decides to go to bed, but unbeknownst to him, Kotono was in the room next door, listening to the whole thing. The next day, the siblings continue their day at school as usual, and at the end of the day, their father calls up Arata for a father-son talk. He first asks Arata if the siblings are okay after the big announcement, to which Arata tells him that they have become more expressive since the announcement. But to Arata's surprise, the father asks him if he has found his special someone. Meanwhile, the girls are watching a romantic series together, where the guy proposes to his special someone on a bridge. While Banri sees it as romantic for a guy to profess their love in the wild, Uka feels the ick seeing a girl getting a proposal in the wild like a bum. They ask Uka what her ideal situation is, and she expresses how she would love to be proposed to by a rich alpha in an expensive restaurant using $1 million ring. Zeha tells her that she should lay off the henny, and when she gets asked the same question, Zeha expresses how she would love to marry someone who already has everything figured out, starting from how many children they will have to how many hot yoga sessions a week. However, Minami completely shits down the topic by saying that what truly matters is not the place or the circumstances, but it's the person who proposes to them, which they all wholeheartedly agree. As they are walking back to their rooms, Kotono is slowly losing control over her emotions, and when she loses it, to everyone's shock, she declares to them how she is in love with Arata. Banri tries to calm her down, understanding that she loves him as a brother, but Kotono once again declares to make it clear that she loves Arata and wants to marry him. After everything she saw, she declares that every single one of her sisters is her rival, and she's not intending to lose. Back with Arata, his father expresses how he's worried that Arata might not have a wife as the future heir of the family, and out of curiosity, he asks his father what made him choose their mother. He initially jokes by saying that he fell in love with her creamy plots, but ends up confessing that he was weakly in love with their mother's powerful, bright soul. Arata asks him why they only have one picture of her, and the father tells him how truly beautiful people don't like to be in photos. He asks Arata if he remembers the secretive 8th room in the house, and Arata tells him that he and the others, who still haven't been inside that room, used to believe that it's a room to get them to an Isekai. Arata tells his father that while he believes that the father had a reason to reveal the truth just recently, he believes that they will work through it and that he's proud to be his oldest son. As the future heir of the family, Arata tells his father that he will always look over his siblings and ensure that they will all have a happy life. When Arata leaves, the father looks at the picture of his wife and expresses to her how proud he is to have adopted Arata as his son. The next morning, Arata goes for a run after his conversation with his father. Meanwhile, the sisters are still conflicted after Kotono's declaration, telling them that she wanted to marry Arata. When Minami steps out of the house, she walks into Arata and gets nervous, remembering what Kotono said. Arata knows something is wrong and asks Minami to spill it out, but she refuses to do so and runs away to practice for the Inter-High tournament. Inside the house, Banri is scolding the dog for eating too much and not getting enough exercise, warning it that it might become a fat, useless dog. When Arata spots them, he joins in scolding the dog for not wanting to jog with him and instead eating like a fatty. Suddenly, Banri suggests that they should decrease the dog's food, which angers the dog so much that it bites Arata, blaming him for what just happened. Just then, Shion pops up, getting some breakfast, and he reminds Banri that she's late for her meeting for the day. However, when they look at Arata's body on the floor, they wonder what to do with it. Later during tennis practice, Minami struggles to focus, still stuck with what Kotono told them. However, despite being out of form, she still gets praised by her peers, who ask her what her secret is. Instead of answering seriously, Minami yaps about some BS about lions and cats. Just then, Minami notices her senior, Nao, and challenges her to a game, betting a drink in the process. They play a childlike tennis game that tests their agility, which Minami wins in the end. While resting, Nao tells Minami that the Inter-High will be her final tournament, but she's not worried as she knows that their great hope lies in Minami. She talks about how she initially thought that Minami would be an arrogant brat. And while she is arrogant, Nao also saw how Minami worked the hardest. She wishes that they both reach their dreams, which touches Minami's heart. She jokes about Nao's motivational speech, and she gets flustered, so she challenges Minami to a rematch. Afterward, Minami hears that Nao didn't receive any college scholarships, so after she graduated, she had to stop playing tennis and get a job. It reminds Minami of the first time she met Nao, where she greeted Minami warmly and invited her to play the game with her, which ended in Minami's victory. Now, Minami wants nothing more than to send off Nao with a gold medal, and she makes it her mission. Back home, the maid calls up Arata for something, and she tells him something about Minami. Arata confronts Minami, who's working out, and she gets freaked out by him approaching her. Suddenly, Arata declares himself as his trainer, and while she's yapping about how she doesn't need one, he reveals that he knows that she's injured. He tells her that the maid saw her taping her ankles, and Arata intends to stay by her side during her training. Meanwhile, Uka is in her room, still thinking of what Kotono told them, and while they wanted to believe that Kotono was not serious, Seiha warned them that, as they are no longer blood-related, Kotono's declaration of love towards Arata should be taken seriously, which, to this night, Uka is still thinking about. Back in the gym, Arata helps Minami stretch to help with the injury. It reminds him of the time they used to stretch together in the past, but unlike before, he notices how much Minami's body has changed from her soft skin to her supple plumps. He quickly gets his mind off it by asking Minami if she told her team about her ankle, and she tells him that she hasn't. Arata tries to scold her, but Minami expresses how she wants to win the Inter-High, not just for herself, but also for someone precious. After her stretching, she turns the table and stretches Arata. When she pushes herself on his back, he can feel her holy attributes pushing into him, but to his surprise, he realizes that she doesn't notice them. After leaving the gym, Arata runs into Kotono, who freezes in place at the sight of him. He realizes it's the first time they're alone after the fun bathroom incident. She asks him if he was just alone with Minami, as she's worried that she might tell him about her declaration. And he tells her that he was. Kotono pushes and asks if Minami was acting weird, and Arata gets flustered after the stretching session that he just had, but he tells her that she wasn't. Arata asks Kotono if she knows something, but she gets flustered and quickly runs away to her room. Days later, Minami competes in the semifinal of the Inter-High, and with her senior on her mind, she fights through her pain and wins the match, sending her and her team into the finals. Outside of the bus, the team congratulates her for getting them to the finals. But as she's walking inside, Minami feels tremendous pain in her ankle, and now notices it. Back home, Arata continues helping Minami stretch her ankle, but Minami informs Arata that after she told her coach about her ankle issues, the coach decided to assign Minami a private trainer to help her. Arata realizes that he will be fired after the finals, but Minami thanks him for his help so far. In his room, Arata puts away all the books he has about stretching, realizing they're not needed for now. The next morning, Arata and his chiseled abs walk into the walking fan service, Banri, having breakfast. He tries to warn her about only eating cereal in the morning, but she teases him, saying that if she gets too fat, Big Arata needs to help her do hot cardio together. Arata asks her if Minami has already had breakfast, but Banri tells him that she hasn't seen her the whole day. Just then, Seiya pops up, also asking about Minami's whereabouts, which shocks them. When the others show up, they ask them if they know Minami's whereabouts, which they don't. But to their shock, Shion informs them that Minami's tennis shoes are still there, which means that Minami is not with her team in the finals, and she has gone missing. They quickly look for Minami in her room, and when they can't find her, they worry sick about her. Suddenly, to their surprise, Minami pops up, saying that she has just been to the convenience store. When they ask her about her Inter-High final, she brushes them off, saying that she has it under control. They ask Shion if he knows anything, and he tells them that he doesn't. Arata feels worried, so he goes to her room, expecting her to be in tears. But to his surprise, Minami is happily snacking away like a fat pig, enjoying her life. Arata expresses how he's worried for her, and she reveals that after her coach discovered that she got injured, she has been taken off the team to avoid her risking her bright future. Arata asks her if she's okay not fighting for that someone precious to her, and Minami brushes him off, saying that she has no choice. Just as Arata is about to leave, he looks back and sees Minami smiling at him half-heartedly. When he steps out, Shion pops up to confront him and reveals something he didn't tell anyone. He tells Arata that earlier that morning, outside of the house, he saw Minami crying all by herself, avoiding anyone from seeing her, and Shion chose to pretend not to see it, as he knows that Minami doesn't want others to worry while deep down, she's hurting deeply. After hearing that, Arata barges into Minami's room and takes her with him outside, where Uka and the others are waiting for Minami, so they can all go support her for her tennis final. On their way there, while the others are worrying that they're going to be late, Minami is lost in thought, remembering the moment she was taken off the team after Nao told the coach about her injury out of her worry. Minami begged them to let her compete, revealing how she knew about it being Nao's last dance with tennis and wanted it to be a victory for her. Nao hugged Minami, thanking her, but wanted Minami not to risk her injury for her own future. Arata tells Minami that he's not sure whether they made the right decision and asks Minami to forfeit if anything goes wrong. He also asked her to never lie to them or to herself ever again. Meanwhile, Minami's team loses the doubles competition, leaving only the singles competition to bring back gold for Nao and her team. Back with the car, everyone panics as they are stuck in traffic, and Arata thinks hard about what to do to get there. Just then, they notice rental bikes on the side of the street, and Seiha tells them that she has the app to rent them. Arata quickly pulls Minami with him to get to the competition, and Shion hands Minami her tennis equipment, sending her off with luck on her side. On the bike ride there, Arata tries his hardest to go as fast as he can, sweating and struggling to breathe properly. He reminds Minami of a time years ago when their school asked them to write things for their mother for Mother's Day. But because their mother is already gone, every single one of them struggled to write anything due to their sadness, apart from Minami. Back then, Minami expresses to her deceased mother how she and her siblings grew closer in her absence, and Arata expresses how he appreciates her as a family member who always smiled even in the toughest times. Arata tells Minami that while she's not a genius, she's a workhorse who has a positive attitude, and Arata prays that she will get rewarded for all of her hard work. In the final, Nao manages to win her side of the singles match, leaving Minami's substitute to win her game. However, Minami and Arata pull up to Nao and the team after a long bike ride. Before Minami gets to say anything, Arata bows down to the ground, begging the coach to let Minami play, saying that to her, the game that's about to happen is as important to Minami as her future. After hearing that, Nao vouches for Minami, and the coach decides to let Minami play. Then the game starts, and when the nerve starts to get to Minami, his family cheers for her from the stands, lowering her nerve. Minami receives first, and through her skill, she manages to win the first point against her opponent. Then the opponent serves again, but this time, she makes it difficult for Minami to keep up, and just as Minami thinks she's winning, the opponent counters. It forces Minami to use her left ankle, which strains it, and she manages to win another point, at the cost of risking an injury. After a grueling final, Minami's team cried in agony as Minami lost the game. She tries to cheer them up, apologizing for her loss, and offers Nao to slap her after all the big talk she did before the game about winning. Instead of a slap, Nao bows to her, thanking her for helping them to achieve their dream of competing on a high level. She prays that the game won't affect her future, and Minami holds herself back from crying. Meanwhile, the siblings are waiting for Minami to come home with them, but they know that after her loss, she's somewhere alone. Arata goes to look for her and finds her by herself sitting on a bench. When she sees him, Minami degrades herself, saying how she let them see her get embarrassed, and that her own team even thanked her despite the loss. She thanks him and the others for bringing her there, and is ready to move on to the next chapter after her loss. However, Arata pulls her in for a hug and tells her to stop lying to herself, not while she's in her brother's embrace. Minami starts asking what she needs to do for her to be good enough, starting from being the best tennis player, all the way to winning Wimbledon and breaking records. She desperately wants to know what she needs to do to become stronger so she won't lose again in the crucial moment. And Arata assures her that in time, she will be strong. And Minami cries her heart out in Arata's embrace. Days after the loss, Minami is deep in her thoughts, still remembering how Arata fought so hard for her and embraced her after her loss, which makes her feel tingly inside. Meanwhile, Uka is arguing with everyone about how she believes that one of Minami's plays was cheated, and she should have gotten a point, which would have shifted the momentum in her favor. She asks Arata for his opinion, and he brushes her off, saying that what matters is that Minami now has no regrets. Minami walks out to the commotion and is unable to look Arata in his eyes. Uka asks her for her opinion, and to her annoyance, Minami no longer cares about the game, and is more grateful that she didn't worsen her injury. Minami takes a seat right in front of Arata, and he gives her pointers on what to do with her injury, and while Minami responds to him, she's unable to turn around to look at him. Still refusing the result with a ball, Uka declares that she will show what actually happened, still believing that Minami should have won. She waves the ball around in frustration, all the while the dog thinks that she's asking to play. Suddenly, the ball slips and heads towards Minami, risking the dog to jump at her, but Arata swoops in and catches the ball to save Minami, which rizzes her up and folds her like a lawn chair. He scolds Uka for not being careful and asks Minami if she's okay. In that moment, Minami remembers how both Uka and Kotono expressed their love for Arata, and he starts thinking whether the tingly feeling in her heart is the same feeling that her sisters had. Later that night, Kotono is thinking hard about her confessions towards Arata when Uka knocks on her door, asking to talk about something. She steps inside and chit-chats about how cute her room looks, which fits her aesthetic, but Kotono is not interested in small talk and asks her to get to the point. Uka confronts Kotono about her confession to Arata and asks her, sister to sister, that Kotono speak to her if she needs someone to listen. Instead of answering, Kotono reveals how she knows that Uka also confessed her feelings to Arata during their trip, and how she saw her with Arata snuggling on the floor in the game room. Uka realizes that what she did pushed Kotono to declare her love for Arata in front of them, and she tells Kotono that she misunderstood. She tells Kotono that she told Arata that she loved him as his former twin sister and that nothing happened in the game room, which Kotono also saw. Kotono gets extremely close and asks Uka if she really is not in love with Arata, and when she tells Kotono that she's not, she sees how much Kotono feels relieved. She apologizes to Uka for misunderstanding, but when Uka steps out of the room, she can't help but think about Arata. Later, Banri panics and begs any one of her siblings to come with her to her nursing school for something, and when none of them can help her, she turns to her old, reliable brother, Arata. Then, they sneak past security into Banri's nursing school, and she expresses how she was too scared to go there alone, out of her fear of ghosts. Arata starts talking about how her school does look haunted, and Banri starts getting scared, begging him to knock it off. It confuses Arat why she picked nursing school, but when he asks Banri about it, she doesn't answer. Suddenly, a loud bang occurs, and Banri latches onto Arata, thinking it's a ghost, but Arata tells her that it's just the wind hitting the windows. With her on his arm, Arata can't help but feel the marshmallow on him, and tries to pull away, but it makes Banri even more scared, so she squeezes even harder, forcing Arata to drag her. Suddenly, Arata pulls her from the back and closes her mouth, telling her to be quiet. At that moment, a security guard walks past, and it makes him wonder why they have to hide when Banri is a student there. Just then, Banri calls out for him, and he realizes that for this whole time he has his hands pushing on her fun pillows, and he quickly lets her go. It reminds him of how they used to play and get in contact physically, but he now truly realizes how different it is with how thick and soft Banri has become. Then they make it to their destination, Banri's club room, and she finally finds what she forgot at school earlier. Her handmade dolls that she planned on finishing that day. Arata asks her what they are, and Banri tells him a story about when she first got into the nursing school. She was brought to check on a hospital. There, she saw children who were hospitalized for a long period, with some of them happily playing, and others sitting depressed in the corner. She then saw some students cheer up the little sad kid and brought his mood back up, which turned out to be volunteers from her school. After she saw that, she applied to the volunteer club in her school so she could do the same thing, and so all the children would never leave the hospital empty-handed with a doll in their hands. Banri told Arata that the reason she applied to a nursing school was that years ago, when she visited their sick mother, she always cried alone whenever she had to leave her. It was back then that a nurse came to cheer her up, and it was then that she knew she wanted to be exactly like the nurse who made a sad little girl happy. Then, Arata and Banri head home, and Banri tells Arata that she is still too embarrassed to tell the others of the reason she became a nurse. As thanks for accompanying her, Banri tells Arata that he must have enjoyed feeling her plots on him earlier, but instead of answering, Arata leaves her behind, forcing her to chase him out of fear. The next day, Banri manages to finish working on the dolls and handed them to the sick children. She sends a picture of it to Arata and thanks him for the help. Days later, Uka and her class receive their results for the mock exam. The others ask Uka what grade she got, and Uka tells them that she got the usual, which doesn't surprise them. They boast about how Uka always got an A and will probably become their next council president, but what they don't know is that Uka actually got a D. On that weekend, in the morning, Uka prepares herself to go somewhere, and Arata asks her where she is going. When Uka tells him that she's going to Yamanashi, he gets surprised, but she brushes it off and goes anyway. It confuses Arata why Uka is going there, knowing they don't have relatives, but he assumes that she just needed some time for herself after everything that happened, and expects her to come back during school day. However, after the weekend had passed and the school day started, Uka still hadn't returned home. Heading to school, the girls group up like usual, but without Uka by their side, they acknowledge how weird it is not to have one of their sisters with them. Arata is worried for her as well, and at school, her friends ask him about it, as Uka has never skipped school before in her entire life, and Arata could only assure them that Uka will be back. It makes Arata wonder what is on Uka's mind to be gone for 3 days. Later at home, Uka still hasn't come home and will miss another day at school, which worries the siblings even more, knowing that it would destroy her reputation if people know that she ran away. Zeha asks Arata if Uka contacted him, and when he doesn't show any urgency, she gets frustrated with him. Suddenly, Banri pops up with her phone and tells her that since Uka once lost her phone, she has a GPS that tracks her. And on Banri's phone, to everyone's shock, Uka is at Mount Fuji. The girls get scared for her, thinking of the worst scenarios, but Shion calms them down. Meanwhile, Uka is on her way to the top of Mount Fuji, climbing alone, and manages to reach the summit to stay one more night. The innkeeper tells her that it's unusual for people to stay as long as her, and Uka tells her that she has something she needs to see. Back at the house, Arata decides to track her down, and while Banri expresses her concern with Arata leaving, Seiha tells him that he fully trusts him to find Uka and bring her back. He rides an express to get to Mount Fuji, and once he gets there, he contacts Banri, asking him about Uka's position. Banri informs him that Uka is at a higher place, and Arata assumes she's staying in a mountain lodge. He starts walking there by himself, flashlight in hand, not caring about the darkness, all for his precious sister. It impresses him how Uka also walked the trail by herself, and despite knowing that she has a lot on her mind, Arata still wonders why she came to Mount Fuji. Back home, both Minami and Kotono are unable to sleep due to them both being worried, but when Kotono expresses how she's more worried for Arata, Minami gets nervous and assures her that Arata will be fine. After an hour of walking, Arata reaches the mountain lodge, surprising Uka. She asks him why he's suddenly there, and to her surprise, he simply tells her that she's looking for her. Arata tells the innkeeper that he will be staying the night, and she signs them both into the same room, knowing that they're siblings. Arata texts his family that he has found Uka, and all of them breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that Uka is safe. Then Uka and Arata enter their room, realizing how awkward it is for them both to sleep next to each other. Just then, Uka tells him not to look, as she's about to change. He quickly turns around, feeling nervous about his inner freaky Alabama thoughts, wondering why he's seeing Uka in a different light, even though he has seen her body multiple times before his siblings. After she finishes changing, they head to sleep, and Arata tells her that they are heading back in the morning. But to his confusion, Uka tells him that she refuses to go back home. He asks her why she went to Mount Fuji, but instead of answering his question, she asks whether the others are worried, to which Arata tells her that they are. Then she tells Arata, reminding him of how Mount Fuji was the place where their mother and father met, which Arata forgot. She tells him that they were strangers, but their father was the man who carried their mother from the top, all the way down, when their mother was ill due to the extreme altitude. Uka then expresses how, just like how their parents met each other, she believes that people have their destined partner assigned for them since birth. To Arata's shock, she wonders whether that exists in their family, and while Arata rejects that idea, Uka reminds him how Kotono really loves him romantically, which Arata still refuses to believe. He asks her if this is what has been on her mind, but she doesn't answer, and he realizes that she's already asleep. While looking at her back, he sees how the usual arrogant sister of his looks so weak and fragile, and that the amazing Uka Shionji is nothing but a normal girl. He puts her blanket on her properly and goes to sleep, so he can rest for the next day's journey home. However, when he wakes up to his surprise, Uka is not there beside him, and instead, she left a note telling him that she has gone home first. He doesn't believe what she said and contacts Bonri to ask her about Uka's location. Bonri tells him that Uka is still on the mountain summit, and Arata heads there. Meanwhile, Uka continues her climb by herself, and when she reaches the summit, she stands there by herself, confusing other visitors who saw her there the day before, making them wonder what she's doing. As the fog starts to thicken up, Uka starts getting impatient and waiting for her fated lover, so she heads back down, questioning why she's there in the first place. Arata tries to meet her halfway on the summit, but doesn't find her, so he heads back down, assuming that Uka has gone down before him to the lodge and is heading home. Back with Uka, she got distracted and ended up lost in the mountains, after realizing that no one was there. She tries to find people calling out for them, but death calls for her as she slips down the mountain and lands where no one can get to her. She realizes that her leg is horribly injured and desperately screams for help. Back with Arata, the innkeeper tells him that Uka has not returned and her luggage is still there. Back home, Bonri has lost her signal of Uka and doesn't know her location anymore. With death closing in, Uka's life flashes before her eyes and she remembers the moment her father gave her her mother's earrings. She asked him how they met, and it was then that the father told Uka the story of how he saved her mother on Mount Fuji. To her, her father was like a prince who met his princess on Japan's highest peak, and the father assured Uka that she would one day find her prince. Uka then wakes up, realizing she was asleep for a moment. She realizes that her life is in danger, but doesn't see how it matters, as she has caused trouble to her family again. She looks at the earring her father gave her, and it falls from her hand. She struggles to find it in the fog, but sees a light reflecting on it, which helps her to get it back. She quickly looks up to find the light source, and there she sees Arta, her prince, reminding her of what her father told her about fate. Years ago back then, whenever Uka had something to vent or talk about, she would always talk to her father about it, and the old man was always willing to listen with a smile on his face. But after what happened recently, Uka has been unable to do the same thing. Even when her father asked her about it, she blew him off. Back on Mount Fuji, Arata sees the injury on Uka's leg, and without skipping a beat, he tells her to get on his back so he can carry her. She tries acting tough, saying that she can walk alone, but Arata tells her to knock it off and get on his back. Meanwhile, the other siblings are heavily anxious, not knowing what's happening on the mountain, so much that even their father canceled his meeting and is heading back home. Back on the mountain, Arata carries Uka back to the track, slowly getting back to where they were staying. He quickly realizes that with the heavy rain falling on them, he struggles to walk and breathe. Just then, Uka confesses that the reason she went to the mountain was because she saw a TikTok about how if a person brought a dead person's precious belongings, they could meet that dead person one more time. However, she now realizes that it's impossible as she's not really her mother's daughter, and that she doesn't really have a real family in this world. With tears in her eyes, she painfully expresses how she can no longer talk to her father like she used to, knowing that everything has changed, even when everyone told her it hadn't. With her grades dropping and her mind full, she doesn't know what to do anymore. From his own heart, Arata tells Uka that despite what happened, he is still her twin, which is why he managed to find her. Despite not being a real family, Arata assures Uka that he will always be there for her, and his shoulder will always be there for her to cry on. It makes Uka tear up, and as Arata yaps along, she cries on his shoulder. Then, they leave the inn and head down from the mountain, where, to their surprise, Bonri and the others are waiting for him, saying how worried they are when Arata stopped contacting them. When Bonri notices Uka's injury, she turns on her mom mode and starts worrying for her. They reveal that the reason they are there is because Minami demanded that they chase after them. And when Arata thanks Minami for it, Minami blushes. On the car ride home, they ask Uka why she ran off to Mount Fuji, and not wanting to tell the truth, she simply tells them she wanted to see where their mother and father met. They simply accept her reasoning with kindness, but Uka feels conflicted with how nice they are treating her after the stunt she pulled, and realizes that she could never tell them the real reason she ran away. Suddenly, Arata falls on her shoulder and falls asleep heavily. Uka blushes and recalls how in the past, she once scolded Arata for not being a gentleman, and taught him to always provide his shoulder when a woman needs it. Arata demanded gender equality, and Uka agreed that women should also provide their shoulder for a man, as long as that man is their romantic partner. And now, Uka can't help but remember her own words and see Arata as a romantic partner, so she lets him sleep on her shoulder. When they get home, the others get ready to unload the car when Uka realizes that Arata is not waking up and his temperature is extremely high. Then, Shion carries Arata to his room so he can lie down, and in that moment, their father pops up, worrying about his children. They tell him how Arata carried Uka in the rain, and he praises his son for his action and tells the others to rest up. Later that night, Uka meets up with her father and vents about how she struggled to see him, as her father like she used to. However, after what happened on the mountain, Arata made her realize that she still loves him and gives him a warm hug, one that the father gladly accepts. The next day, Uka is back at school and his friends greet her back for her return. But because Arata is sick, they feel bad for him. Later, at home, Banri cooks up some porridge for Arata, and when she finishes cooking, she asks the others if anyone wants to bring it to Arata. Minami and Kotono both quickly want to take that role, and they both wonder why the other is excited to bring the porridge to Arata. Banri asks Minami to bring it to Arata, and whispers to Minami about how she's worried that Kotono might get freaky in Arata's room, not knowing Minami would love to do the same. Then, Uka shows up, and Seiha points out how she's supposed to be the one to nurse Arata after what he did for her, but Uka brushes them off, saying that the muscular idiot should be fine. She goes off to take a bath, thinking of what she should do, and when she finishes, she tells the others that the bathroom is free and secretly goes to Arata's room, saying that she will get the porridge bowl. When Uka enters the room, she apologizes for what happened and expresses how happy she really is that Arata came to save her. She tells Arata that one of the things she wanted to ask their dead mother was whether it's okay for her to fall in love with him, but despite not meeting their mom, she now knows her feelings for him after how he saved her and comforted her. While the others are fooling around downstairs, not knowing what's happening upstairs, Uka is alone in Arata's room, kissing him tenderly and letting the kiss linger, all the while Arata is asleep. She then takes the porridge bowl and leaves the room, saying that she will come back later. But unbeknownst to her, when she leaves, Arata is wide awake, thinking what in the Alabama is going on. Some days later, to get themselves some fresh air, Arata and the others visit their family's holiday villa, one that Arata remembers used to be where he and the others visit every holiday, but this time their father is not with them, so it's just the siblings. When Arata imagines their usual sleeping outline, Banri pops from the back, teasing him about shaking the bed together with her, and Arata scolds her for the degenerate plot ideas. Then, when he looks at Uka, he can't help but remember how she kissed him after she thought he was asleep. He questions what Uka meant when she said that she liked him, but in that moment Uka notices that Arata is deep in thought, so she goes to confront him, asking if he's okay. He tries brushing her off, but when he notices her luscious lips, the same ones that kissed him, he starts tweaking and runs away. Later, Arata is in the middle of his thought-provoking shower when Shion suddenly pops in, telling Arata he forgot to close the door. Arata asks him where he went off to, and to his surprise, Shion confesses that he went to find his real parents, and that he was the one who suggested this trip so he could achieve that goal. However, he informs him that he failed to find them. He asks Arata if he's also curious about his real parents, and Arata expresses how, while he does have an interest, he only sees their father as his father, as he believes that blood doesn't determine one's family. After hearing that, Shion tells Arata that he's over finding his real parents and now holds the same sentiment as Arata, seeing his current family as his real family. The next morning, while the others are asleep, Uka wakes up early, only to realize that Arata is no longer there and is in the sauna tent, getting himself warmed up. However, due to thinking about Shion's search for his family and Uka's confession, he overheats and steps out of the tent, only to find Uka waiting for him, which makes him even more heated. His thoughts wander with Uka being close to him, especially after she has been trying to get even closer to him, not knowing he was awake during their kiss. Just then, she invites him to enter the sauna with her for an endurance test. But feeling the awkwardness, he tells her to go alone. But to his surprise, she decides to just sit next to him instead, which makes him even more flustered, knowing how she feels for him. He quickly gets her to do the endurance test, and they both enter the sauna, just like how they used to, but unlike before, this time Arata can't help but stare at her plots that are slowly getting sweaty due to the heat. Suddenly, she asks him if he's planning to get a girlfriend, and not wanting to make it even more awkward, he tells her that he's not interested at the moment. Unable to handle the heat, Arata exits the sauna, which worries Uka, and she asks him if he's no longer simping for Lala, his longtime crush. When he thinks about it, he expresses how, despite his history with her, he has no more feelings for Lala, and is not so pathetic to be struggling to move on. When Uka hears that, she gets joyful and runs off to take a shower, where she's conflicted by her own feelings and actions, where she constantly wants to get close to Arata and be around him. She remembers all the times she was with Arata in the sauna, asking him whether he has a crush on someone. But now she just realizes that even from back then, she had already developed feelings for him. Back with Arata, he imagines that what Uka feels for him is the same as Kotono's, so he decides to do something about it. Just then, Minami pops up and invites him to go somewhere. To his surprise, they go to a flower garden, which to Arata is not somewhere Minami would usually go to. But considering that she's a girl, he can see that she may have an interest in it, and notices changes in her, like wearing a skirt to be more girly. However, when he looks around, he sees all the couples on a date there, and he wonders why Minami chooses to go there. Suddenly, she asks Arata what his ideal wife would be like, which surprises him, and he gives a basic answer of someone with whom he can be comfortable with. Her question reminds him of all the questions Uka asked him just then, making him confused. Suddenly, Arata notices that Minami's skirt still has a price tag on it, and when she tries desperately to take it off, he goes to help her. When he struggles to do so, he tells her that he will bite it off, and she is left flustered while Arata bites the price tag off of her. Afterward, they enjoy their trip at the park, taking pictures to commemorate their trip, and not before long, 2 hours pass by. Arata suggests to Minami that they should go home, and she suddenly tells him that she's in love with someone. Despite not knowing who it is, Arata expresses how happy he is for his little sister. And when he recounts the date they just went on, he realizes that she was practicing a date by using him as her training partner. She expresses how helpful their trip really is and runs away flustered to buy some merchandise. There, she goes to buy matching merchandise for both her and Arata to show how grateful she is, and all he cares about is how happy his little sister is. But when he recalls how Minami told him she's in love with someone, he can't help but remember Uka's confession, which gets his brain to start trembling. The next day, the siblings go to a waterfall to go swimming like the old days, getting wet and wearing swimsuits. Some simps in the back ogle over the girls, thinking they're here for a shoot, and Shion tells Arata how lucky they are to always get first-class seats to see their sisters' plots. Arata tells this weirdo that the girls are their sisters, but when he looks closer, he can't help but imagine freaky thoughts and quickly stops himself from thinking too far. Then they do their own thing, and Uka jumps off from the back, just like how she used to. But while she's enjoying herself, Seiha informs her that people who like extreme sports usually have low IQ and are idiots. Hearing that reminds Shion of how Seiha used to join Uka and hold her hand while jumping, but Seiha quickly brushes it off, saying that the old her is dumb as bricks. Uka then invites Arata to join her, but when he sees how pretty she is, he quickly rejects, not wanting to jump while doing a full salute. She then asks Minami if she wants to jump, and she tells her that she only wants to jump if Arata joins her. After hearing that, Arata agrees to accompany her, and she takes this chance to grab his hand before jumping with him alongside her. Just then, Seiha jumps down as well, and Arata can see that despite how much older they are still the same old siblings who likes to have fun. Suddenly, Seiha starts panicking, and when Arata asks, Seiha reveals that she lost her inner top during the fall. Arata starts tweaking, realizing that her pepperonis are on site, but then they both see it. Seiha heads towards it, but when Arata sees the pudding, he quickly gets it for her. After handing it to her, he convinces himself that they are siblings, but when Seiha exits the water, he sees the black lace and can't help thinking some Alabama thoughts. Then Banri declares that she wants to swim, and when she orders Arata to join her, getting wet, Minami and Uka watch closely in jealousy. The two get into the water, where some simps are gossiping over the beautiful sight they are seeing, and Arata can't blame them, acknowledging how plotful his older sister is. Suddenly, she jumps on his back, pushing her melons into him, causing his mind to wander. She tells him that if he needs to vent, she will be there for him, but he stays silent, not wanting to reveal what his lips tasted like with Uka on them. He simply tells her that he will be a brother that won't make her worry, but that only reminds Banri of what happened with Kotono. They get closer to the waterfall, and Banri insists that they get even closer. She pushes herself too hard into him, and Arata slips, causing them both to fall. Silence falls into them, and in that moment, Banri tells Arata that she loves him, but because of the waterfall, he couldn't hear her. However, near them, Kotono hears everything. Later, when Arata is all alone, Kotono asks him to accompany her to a nearby vending machine to get some alone time. Arata suspects she wants to say something, but when he brings it up to her, she brushes it off. It reminds Arata how she once drowned in the river, but Kotono assures her that she's a big girl who won't drown now, and when Arata looks closely, he gets some Alabama thoughts and blames it on Uka's kiss. Once they get to the vending machine, Kotono wants to say something, but stops halfway. As her brother, Arata encourages her to open up to him, saying how he will always be there for her, and in that moment, Kotono cries heavy tears, which takes Arata by surprise. She blames herself for acting impulsively for what recently happened with the other sisters, but Arata assures her that, despite her impulses, being there for her is what an older brother should do. His warmth reminds Kotono of their old days, when she was always spoiled by their father and received special treatment among the others. It made the others follow suit, not involving Kotono in their business, which makes Kotono feel that everything would stay the same if she suddenly disappears. Then, one day, everyone panicked as Kotono was drowning in the river. The others could only watch in fear, seeing Kotono so close to death, but Arata was the one who jumped in and saved her from sleeping with the fishes. Once saved, she apologized to Arata for being a burden to him and everyone. But as a big brother, Arata told Kotono that he would always be there to save her. In that moment, Kotono saw Arata differently than the others, as someone who put her first, and it made her want Arata to be more than just her older brother. When they return to the others, Banri scolds them for being late, but in that moment, Minami and Uka realize that Kotono managed to get some alone time with Arata, which makes them feel conflicted. That night, following their tradition, they end their holiday by visiting the church for a candle night. Meanwhile, Arata is still lingering over Uka's kiss and starts panicking, not knowing what to do. He realizes that if he does nothing, it would make things worse for Uka, so he decides to find a solution to it. Just then, he stumbles on Kotono, Minami, and Uka, talking in secret. He realizes that Kotono is about to face her dilemmas, and he supports her from afar. Kotono apologizes to the two for making things complicated to them by telling them her true feelings for Arata. She reveals that she saw the message Minami sent and also knows about Uka's confession to Arata in the amusement park. She declares that she truly loves Arata and apologizes for her selfishness. However, to her shock, Minami confesses that she also loves Arata romantically and she refuses to hide it anymore. So she tells Kotono that from then on, they will be rivals in love. Suddenly, Uka also confesses that she also loves Arata, which surprises them both, and she reveals that deep down she has loved him for a while, but was always in denial, until now. The three face each other, and as sisters promise that whoever Arata chooses to love and bump bellies with, the other two won't have any hard feelings, and will continue to love each other as siblings. Meanwhile, Arata, who heard the whole thing, curses the sibling-loving gods for what his ears have just heard. But what they all don't know yet is that among them, there is a pair of actual siblings, waiting to be revealed. Comment down below, Sister Kisser, if you finished the video. Subscribe so you don't miss the next season. See you later.